Hello, I am Investigator NZ0. Welcome to your podcast Latin Macabre Stories and more. Remember to read the warning notice in the description before listening. If you are new, pause, read, and continue. I invite you to follow us on YouTube. Thank you for following us, commenting and liking us here YouTube. Listen and visualize the following in your mind. The Girls of the Pastora Curve. Adapted by Eduardo Linen. This story is quite well known in Monterrey, and perhaps many of you have already heard it. Doing a little digging, there were some comments and notes that mentioned that these events took place in the 70s. If you are from this area, maybe you should comment what you know about it and leave it in the comments box. The story begins like this. The Pastora area is currently a busy urbanized area in Guadalupe and very close to the slopes of Cerro de la Silla. However, years ago it was an uninhabited place, with large expanses of vacant land and forested regions, where it was common for people to go on excursions or go camping with their families. One of their excursions turned into a tragedy when two unfortunate teenagers were kidnapped and murdered under strange circumstances. They had arrived at that place along with other young people their age. While living together, they decided to go explore the wooded area alone, without telling anyone. Time passed and night fell on them in that place, desperately trying to find a way out. They only met death. A search was carried out to locate it, and one day, finally, they were found in a place very close to the Pastora Curve. They had been brutally abused and murdered. The news spread quickly throughout the Monterrey, Mexico area, where many investigations were carried out to find him or the perpetrators of this bloody and cruel crime. They were never able to find those responsible, and the crime of the young girls remained unsolved, with time and the growth of the population. The Pastora area began to grow and organize. This meant that many vehicles and public transport passed through the area. It is at this point where the legend of the Children of the Curve begins to gain strength. Testimonies and conversations began to emerge among people suggesting that young people appeared in this place, scaring drivers and causing non-fatal accidents. These accidents were caused suddenly by seeing them, mainly in the rearview mirror or crossing the road. Taxi drivers and bus drivers have been the ones who have had the most contact with these phenomena. A city bus driver was returning to base after finishing his shift. It was 8 p.m., and the sun had fallen. Darkness loomed over the peaks of Cerro de la Silla, and the lights of hundreds of cars could be seen crossing the avenue. As we rounded the bend, the bus's lights illuminated a couple of young girls who stopped him. The driver made a gesture with his hands that he was no longer going and continued on his way. After a while, something caught his attention, and he looked in the rearview mirror. It was the image of the young girls he had seen at the bend, sitting in the back of the vehicle, staring at him and dressed in his school uniform. Seeing them, the driver braked and swerved the wheel that almost caused him to crash into a garnish. He turned to look for the young people, and they had already disappeared. Another chilling testimony was made by the flight. A night owl whose vehicle breaks down when turning the bend. It is mentioned that it would be approximately 1 in the morning. When overwhelmed and tired, he decides to get out of the car, taking the necessary precautions to prevent another vehicle will collide with your car. He posted signs and pulled out his tool to see if he could fix the fault, which apparently appeared to be electrical. He was concentrating on trying to remove the battery cables from his car when out of the corner of his eye he saw two people suddenly stop next to him. When he turned around, he couldn't help but let out a scream from the shock of seeing two young girls standing next to his car and holding hands. He was wearing what looked like a school uniform, and they were staring at the man with a lost look. "What are you doing here at this hour? Where are your parents?" the man asked strangely. But instead of getting any response, the young girls' expressionless faces began to change. They showed a grimace of sadness and pain, accompanied by a gesture of crying. The man's surprise and fear was enormous when before his own eyes, these two apparitions simply disappeared. Another event that marked the legend was a strange accident that occurred at this site. It would be in the early morning when a group of young people returns from a party. They came in a truck and listened to music and drank beer, some of them standing in the bed of the pickup holding the radilla, while others came in the cabin singing happily at the top of their lungs. And suddenly there was a sudden brake that caused those behind to lose their balance and fall backwards onto the box. When they got up, the truck's engine was still running and both the driver and passengers had gotten out of the cabin. When investigating what happened, the driver was upset because he thought he saw some young people in the middle of the road, one of them lying on the ground and the other crying, trying to revive her. He mentions that they were seconds and that he had thought he had taken some. The young people took on the task of searching around to see if I saw anyone. The search was futile as no one was found. Everyone made fun of the driver and said that his alcohol had already increased. Among jokes and insults, they decided to continue on their way. They left another young man behind the wheel, and those behind them began to joke about what had happened. Suddenly, they heard a childish giggle behind them that made them turn around. There were some young boys leaning on the lid of the box, staring at them. The young people froze and began to tremble. They paled as they suddenly disappeared. A few moments later, a second brake came and an unexpected turn caused the truck to leave the road and crash into a pole. The young people behind, thanks to the fact that they were clinging to the grill, managed to avoid being ejected by the impact. Everyone got out, beaten and stunned, to help those who came behind. Fortunately, they had only received a few bumps and bruises. Everyone was terrified, shocked not only by the crash, but because the driver suddenly heard giggling on his side. He turned around for a few moments to observe and saw with horror the face of a girl looking out the window. This was what prompted him to swerve and put his foot on the brake, the curve that holds the mystery of the missing girls. These days, many people reported having seen their manifestations and have had contact with these unfortunate spirits that continue to wander and wait in this place. The truth is, we will never know, but the place is there, waiting for you to visit and hopefully meet the wandering spirits of these girls. Follow us, subscribe and share on YouTube. This helps me continue with this project. Give your opinion. In the description you will find the emails to send your stories in case you like to share them. I appreciate your preference. Until the next episode. Latin macabre stories and more.